What's going on, everybody? Andrew here with Prodigy Fitness, and on this episode of Prodigy Simply Fit podcast, I am joined by a good buddy of mine, Joe Rosenthal with Kinect Performance. Joe and I have known each other for quite some time. Kinect Performance is here in Pleasanton as well. Joe specializes in working with rotational athletes, but I also thought he'd be a good person to bring on to talk about. He works with adults as well, so I figured it'd be a good person to talk about for somebody who is struggling, right? Struggling to get started on their fitness journey, and maybe he can share some tips and tricks that he uses with his athletes, his adult members, to kind of help them get started. So, Joe, I appreciate you joining me. If you don't mind, spend a little bit of time really just kind of talk about who you are, kind of talk about Kinect a little bit, and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Super excited to be on. Like Andrew said, Joe Rosenthal, Kinect Performance, actually just right around the corner. Andrew and I go way back. But yes, today we're going to talk about my top 3 tips and tricks to get going with a fitness journey. And then also what I would think would be more important is like continuing with it. So I just want to dive right into it.
Sure.
My top 3 are basically start slow and create habits, right? And then be consistent, number 2. And then number 3 is have a good team, right?
Yeah.
Like have that good team around you. So number 1, right? Start slow. I think that that's so important in the sense that I see too often, it's like, okay, sitting at the kitchen table and I'm like, all right, I got to do something about this. Like I'm signing up. I'm doing the nutrition thing. I'm going, 6 to 7 days. I'm going, and that's great for 8 days. And then it starts to piddle off, right?
Right.
And then after, probably not that long, you're doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So what I've noticed, and I'm sure you too, Andrew, is start slow, create these habits. If you're talking about doing 1 day a week of working out, or 1 day a week of like eating really well, get really good at that, right? And then you say, you know what, I've been doing that for quite some time now. Let's add that second day, right? And then the third, and then the fourth. And then now when things start to get a little rocky, which they will, you're like, this is my normal,
right?
This is my normal. I've been doing 3 days a week working out for a long time. I'm not stopping that, right? So you, at that point, over a good amount of time, you've created these habits. So that's definitely going to be number 1 for me, is just start slow and build from there.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I think that, like you said, people often go from like 0 to 100 so quick, and they're just physically, mentally not ready for that, right?
Yeah.
Like they think it's going to be easy.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it may just be simple in terms of, hey, go work out 1 or 2 days a week, go for a walk 1 or 2 days a week, eat, X, 2 or 3 days, whatever it is. But even though it's simple, it's not necessarily easy, especially if you haven't been doing it for years, right?
Yeah.
So start small, right?
Yes.
And I like the adage of, the other thing that I think we see a lot too is that people often say like, well, I'm just not motivated enough, right, to get going. When I think it aligns with this, and that don't necessarily wait to be motivated, right? You're not going to be motivated, but instead focus on small steps, right? Maybe it's going for a walk 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day. And then you start building that momentum, and then that builds up that motivation, and that's going to keep you going, when you're
exactly, right? Because like, even if you're not motivated at all, you could go for a walk for 10 minutes, right? And then that 10 minutes turns into 15, and then 20, and then now you're doing it every other day. And again, it's that snowball effect of building. And you could do that for being physical, here in the gym, or when we're talking about maybe losing some weight and stuff like that, working on the nutritional aspects as well, even mental stuff, right? Like it just builds on itself, and it becomes the new normal.
And I like the other idea you said too, of like start with one thing, right? Like I think too many people will try to change too many things at one time, and it becomes so overwhelming. Right? So I love that idea. So let's expand on that a little bit. Like what are some things, like if you were to say, hey, maybe start with this one thing, like what would be the first thing that you would maybe tell somebody to start with?
I would say just get moving.
Yeah.
Get moving in whatever realm you feel most comfortable doing.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe we talked about this walking, right? Maybe it's like a yoga or like a mobility or stretching or something like that. Maybe it's just doing some body weight stuff at home. But like just whatever you decide to do, make sure that it's something that you enjoy. Like it's the most enjoyable form of being physical. And I guess to answer your question, it would be just get physical.
Yeah.
Get physical.
No, I think it's a good one. I think another one that we go to often is water, right? Like, I think one of the things for us is we see, and I'm sure it's with everybody, is people just aren't drinking enough water, right? And so that's a simple one where, hey, like, let's not worry about anything with food or nutrition right away. Let's not cut any food out or any of that stuff, but like, let's just get you to drink more water on a daily basis.
Sure.
And with that, like, start small.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Let's not go straight from one glass a day to a gallon.
Right.
But let's go from like 1 glass to maybe 2 or 3 glasses a day. And slowly build on that.
And interestingly enough, like what I've noticed is now you've done, like, that's a healthy thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, good, I feel great. Like, you don't want to sabotage that.
Right.
So then now you're like, oh, I've had my water for like, 4 or 5 days straight, like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Like, this is making me feel really good.
Yeah.
Like, let me just add that little bit in there. And then again, it snowballs into more and more and more.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I love it. So kind of starting small, right? Focusing on building really good habits. And I think is a great kind of foundation piece, especially, get you going, but also more importantly, as the kind of the days get quote unquote dark and it's hard and you don't want to get out of bed, whatever it is, right? Building those foundational habits to where you wake up and you go, hey, I don't care if I don't feel good. Like, I've got to go for my walk, or I've got to go do
it's
whatever.
a part of my day.
Exactly.
And that kind of rolls into my number 2, which is be consistent, right? So once you've started, all right, we've kind of got that down. We got some momentum going. The best thing is to be consistent.
Yes, I agree.
So Coach just said, setting that foundation. You've set that. Now it's like, okay, how can we do it on whatever frequency you want, right? Maybe it's every other day, or maybe we are doing something every day. Stay consistent with it. That's what's really going to lock in these habits that we talked about. And then later on down the road, it's always going to be there. So consistency is going to be number 2. Coach,
I think that's great. And I think going back a step real quick, but think of the idea of, we talked about keeping it simple, so simple to where you can't not be consistent with it, right? Like, it's so simple of, and I think, Joe would agree, right? Like, I would rather someone say, I would rather tell someone, hey, go for a walk for 10 minutes every single day than, go for a 5-mile walk once every 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, go for a 10-mile walk, be consistent with it. That's going to be that's going to be better for you.
Yeah. And from a physiological perspective, like, that's the way to go, right? Like, you're not going to get anything out of this crazy intense workout or eating really well for 1 day out of the week. Like, that's not about that, right? It's the little steps that we take every day that later on down the road you're going to show our success, right? Yes. Plant the seed and then just nurture it and let it grow. And a quick little story is, the consistency is so important. And I've had so many people that have come in and they've seen results, and then they hit a little bit of a plateau, kind of get a little bit upset and stuff like that. And then they stop, right? And then what happens is we find out that, 3 to 6 months later, they gained all this weight back and you're not in a good state mentally. And it's like, you know what? If you just think about it, if you just kept going for those 6 months, you would have not regressed at all. Now, were you making, any gains during that time? I don't know, maybe not, but you didn't gain that 10, 15, 20 pounds.
Exactly.
So just always just keeping moving with it, no matter what's going on, whether we're high or we're low, right? We're making gains or we're not really doing much for a long time. Just stick with it. And you and your coach, that actually going to lead into our third point. We'll figure it out, right? We'll figure out what's going to work for you, to spark it, right? And then get it rolling again.
Yeah, and I think along that point, right, the whole idea of consistency, and as you're kind of progressing through your training journey, your fitness journey, right? Let's say you're a year, 2 years, 3 years into it. You know, and you know, us, we're big believers in strength training, and I know you are as well with your athletes and whatnot. But the idea that, you know, you don't have to, you know, crush yourself every single time you're in the gym, right? Like, I would much rather you go 75, 80% in the gym. You're still going to make really good progress doing that over a consistent amount of time.
Correct.
As opposed to coming in and giving 150%, and then you're wrecked for a week.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, and you're not coming in.
And you're going to have those days where you come in and you're juiced, you're pumped, I'm going hard. And there's going to be a lot of those middle of the road days, which is totally fine. And there's definitely going to be those lower days, and that is totally fine. You know, because when you look back, right, at the chart of how you've been doing it, you're gonna have the ups and the downs, but it's gonna have that gradual, you know, incline going up to progress, which is really good. So my third tip that I would say is create a team. Create a team around you that is going to help build you up through this process. And, you know, when you think about, you know, professional athletes and very successful business individuals, they all have a team. No one is doing this by themselves.
Correct.
And, you know, it's awesome. It's cool when you're at that high, like we talked about, and everything's all good. But what's happening when we kind of get, you know, bogged down a little bit? Well, that team is going to build you up. They're going to push you. They're going to stoke you, and, you know, and keep you going and get you back on track. And, you know, what does a team look like? Well, you know, personally, you know, family. I would start with family, right?
For sure.
Like, you should talk with your family circle and say, hey, this is something that I really want to do for myself. Like, you know, are you on board with me? And, you know, chances are they're going to say yes. Like, they're going to be super excited for you. And then now when things get tough, you can go back to them and say, hey, I need some help. Like, push me, right? So you've got family, you got your coaches, right? Like, you've got these individuals that you can go to and you can sit down with, you can talk with, and they're going to help you through. You got your community here, right? Your gym community, right? You're seeing these people that are going through probably the same stuff that you're going through, and, you know, you just chop it up with them and see, hey, you know, I need some help. Like, what are you doing? Right. And that community, that team is really going to help build you up and progress you to where you want to go.
And I think that's huge. And I think to add on that, and we'll go back for a second, is, you know, one, I think the team for everybody might be a little bit different, right? Like, you know, finding, so don't necessarily, you know, think that you have to kind of have the same people that, you know, your friend has, for example, right? But going back to, I think the family one's huge, and it's probably one that's not often talked about, right? Like, the idea that find, you know, have your family support you, right? Like, that's one thing that, you know, it's going to be really hard to potentially stay on your journey, right? If your family is intentionally or unintentionally sabotaging you, right? You know, you're trying to eat really healthy, and all your family wants to do is order, you know, pizza and donuts and things like that. Like, yes, that's not bad in a you know, kind of
every once in a while
setting, right? But like, if you're really trying to lose weight, things like that, like, but having that family support to say, hey, you know what, we understand, we're going to go to a restaurant that has better options for you, right? Or, you know, hey, we're going to order this, what do you want instead, right? And not making you feel guilty or feel bad about yourself or whatever.
Or make it very challenging for you, right? It's like, it's really tempting when every single night you're sitting down and you have this food or, whatever it is, that's not the best for you for what you're trying to go for. Like, that's very challenging, right? Like, it's okay to have some help through the journey, for people to be like, you know what, actually, I'm gonna help out my person. And we're gonna go healthy today, or whatever it is, or maybe they even join in with you, and now it makes it way easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think the other thing along that line, and this goes just for your whole team in general, is, and I think this starts with you, is figuring out, like, how are you best held accountable, right? Like, how are you best coached, if that's the right word, right? Like, are you somebody who needs a little bit of tough love, right? Like, are you somebody who needs a little bit more support, a little bit more of, I call it more of like a cheerleader, right? Because, and then you got to let your team know that, right? Like, if you're somebody who is more of like, hey, I do really well with being a cheerleader, like having a cheerleader, right?
Don't yell at me,
right? Don't give me that tough love, because I'm gonna close up.
Yes,
and then, right? So, and she won't get mad at me for saying it, but like my wife, Amanda, right, is very much like, she needs that kind of, not the tough love, right? She needs the cheerleader.
Yes.
And sometimes it's difficult for me, because I'm very much
go.
Give me the tough love.
Hard. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
Push
so
me. Yeah.
I have to remind myself, when I'm trying to support her on her journey,
Right.
that she doesn't do well with me going, hey, let's go. She needs more of the support of, hey, I understand that you messed up. Like, let's move on. And how can I help you?
And I think that's a really good point, is you as the individual need to actually tell people. Like, you need to use your words, right? Talk to people and say, hey, this is my style. Like, this is how I would like to be spoken to and driven and stuff like that. Otherwise, it's a guessing game, right? And I think Andrew and I would say myself, like, we are pretty good at judging, right? I think we pride ourselves on that, but at that, it's still a guess, right? Until you absolutely just come out and say, like, this is it. Like, you know what? Yes, push me hard, like, or I need it to just be a little bit more chill, kind of like hands-off type stuff. But I think that it kind of falls on you to give us that information. I always like to say, give me as much information about yourself as you care to, because that is going to allow us as the coach or a part of your team to manage accordingly. So don't be shy in that regard. Let us know, and all that's going to do is just allow us to help you more, right? And the people around you.
And I think along the last thing is you mentioned kind of finding a gym community, a supportive community, right? Like, sure, it may be easy for some to work out on their own at home, right? Follow YouTube videos or the Peloton app or whatever it may be. What we have found is that a lot of our members and the new members that we've acquired over the last couple of months have not been able to do it on their own, right? And they need that. So along that line, and I had Sam, Sam, we talked about on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about kind of try other things, right? As you get going and you're building up momentum, you're getting going with it, right? Don't be afraid to try other things, right? Joe and I have similar philosophies, but we also have differences, right, in our programming and things like that. People may not mesh well with us, but they mesh really well with Joe, or vice versa. Or you may find that, hey, yoga works really well for me, or I like spinning, or whatever it may be, right? Find your community.
That's right. I absolutely agree with that. And also, too, don't shut anything out. Right. So, like, I know that Andrew gets this a lot. I don't want to lift weights. Like, I don't want to get bulky, like stuff like that. and I've seen it. I've physically seen it in here, where I've seen those people. And then, a month later, 2 months later, they're stoked about lifting, and, I got super strong. So don't shut any option out as well. Be open to it. Interestingly enough, the reason why Andrew does strength training and higher intensity type stuff is because it's one of the most successful, physiological responses for the body to be strong and get that metabolism going and stuff like that. So that's a good point as well. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So cool. So that was 3. So if you don't mind, let's recap those 3 real quick, and then we'll kind of put a bow on this episode.
Yeah. So number 1 is start slow, create habits. Okay. Number 2, be consistent, right? Once you've started, then just do that thing every day. You don't have to go gung ho, right? Just something every single day, even if it's a 10-minute walk or some mobility or some body weight type stuff. And then the third one is create a team. Find that team that's going to help build you up and move you forward. And if you can just focus on those 3 things, don't make it complicated, which we talked about a little bit earlier. You're going to be so successful with your journey and your experience. It's, you'd be surprised. It's probably going to mold into something that you never even thought possible.
Sure.
Simplicity goes a long way. So I hope that those helped you, and see if you can implement them. And I think you guys are gonna really enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So real quick before we go, I want you to, so like I said earlier in the podcast, Joe works with rotational athletes. He works with kids, adults, anybody out on the golf course. If you guys are looking to improve your game, Joe's the guy to see. Give people kind of a couple of places where they can find you, find out more information about Kinect.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kinect Performance on Instagram. I'm there quite a bit. And then kinectperformance.com is my website. So, yep, if anyone is looking for conditioning for the rotational athlete, I'm your guy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So once again, I appreciate you guys all joining us for this episode of Prodigy Simply Fit podcast. As always, if you don't mind heading over to where you're listening to this podcast, leave us a review. Any comments were greatly appreciated. As always, if you guys have had anything you guys want us to talk about, don't hesitate to leave us a comment. We'd be more than happy to talk about it. All right. Until next time, I will see you guys soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Coach.
Absolutely.